Building a space rocket requires harnessing continuous, controlled explosions to defeat Earth's gravity, demanding a structure that is impossibly light, yet unfathomably strong. The process begins with the construction of the primary airframe and propellant tanks, which make up the vast majority of the vehicle's immense volume. These tanks are forged from advanced aerospace-grade materials, most commonly aluminum-lithium alloys. Lithium is the lightest metal on the periodic table, and blending it with aluminum creates an alloy that is significantly lighter and stronger than standard aircraft aluminum. The manufacturing of a tank dome begins with large, flat, circular plates of this alloy. These massive metal discs are placed onto a heavy-duty spin-forming machine. As the plate spins at high speed, enormous robotic rollers press against the metal, forcing it to yield and stretch over a curved mold called a mandrel. This cold working process shapes the metal into a perfect, seamless dome while simultaneously aligning its crystalline grain structure to drastically increase its tensile strength. For the cylindrical walls of the rocket, thin sheets of the same alloy undergo an intricate milling process. A computer numerical control, or CNC milling machine, carves out a geometric grid pattern, often an isogrid or orthogrid, into the inner surface of the metal. This waffle-like pattern removes up to 90% of the material's weight, leaving behind a thin outer skin supported by thick, intersecting internal ribs. This provides immense structural rigidity, preventing the paper-thin walls from buckling under the crushing aerodynamic loads of launch. Joining these massive metal sections together poses a unique challenge. Traditional arc welding melts the metal, which destroys the carefully engineered strength of the alloy and introduces microscopic flaws. Instead, rocket engineers utilize a process called friction stir welding. In this technique, a rapidly spinning, heavy-duty cylindrical pin is forced into the seam between two metal panels. The intense friction generates massive heat, softening the metal into a plastic, putty-like state without actually melting it. As the spinning tool moves along the joint, it mechanically mixes and forces the softened metal from both panels together, forging a solid-state weld that is nearly as strong as the parent material. Following the welding process, automated non-destructive testing machines scan every millimeter of the seam using ultrasonic waves and X-rays to ensure there are no internal voids or microscopic cracks that could tear open under pressure. Inside these massive tanks, manufacturing continues with the installation of anti-slosh baffles. During flight, thousands of gallons of liquid propellant can surge from side to side, creating a shifting center of mass that would cause the rocket to tumble out of control. To prevent this, lightweight metallic rings and intersecting fins are welded inside the tank walls to break up fluid motion and keep the propellant stable. Deep within the tanks, workers also install composite overwrapped pressure vessels, or COPVs. These are spherical or pill-shaped tanks used to store inert helium gas at incredibly high pressures, often exceeding 5,000 pounds per square inch. The manufacturing of a COPV starts with a thin inner liner made of aluminum. This liner is placed on a multi-axis winding machine that wraps miles of high-strength carbon fiber tow, pre-soaked in epoxy resin, tightly around the aluminum core. The tank is then baked in an enormous industrial oven called an autoclave, curing the resin into a rigid, impenetrable shell. During flight, as the main engines consume the liquid fuel and oxidizer, the fluid levels in the main tanks rapidly drop, which would normally create a dangerous vacuum. To prevent the rocket from collapsing inward like an empty soda can, the highly pressurized helium from the COPVs is routed into the empty space of the propellant tanks, maintaining positive internal pressure and structural integrity. Below the complex tank structures lies the heart of the rocket, the engine. Manufacturing a liquid propellant rocket engine is an exercise in extreme thermal management, as the engine must contain a continuous explosion burning at temperatures that can easily melt steel, while simultaneously processing cryogenic liquids that freeze air. The primary structure of the engine, particularly the combustion chamber and the narrow throat, is often made from a highly specialized copper alloy. Copper is exceptionally conductive, allowing heat to transfer away from the chamber walls rapidly. However, even a solid copper wall would melt under the intense heat of combustion. So engineers employ a technique called regenerative cooling. Historically, manufacturing a regeneratively cooled chamber involved milling hundreds of tiny parallel vertical grooves into the outside of a copper liner. These grooves were filled with wax, and the entire assembly was submerged in an electroplating bath, where a thick layer of a heat-resistant nickel superalloy, like Inconel, was plated over the copper. The wax was then melted out, leaving behind a network of hollow microchannels hidden inside the walls of the engine. Today, this painstaking process is frequently replaced by additive manufacturing, specifically direct metal laser sintering. In this 3D printing process, a machine spreads a microscopic layer of powdered metal alloy onto a build plate. A high-powered laser traces the exact cross-section of the engine part, melting and fusing the powder into solid metal. The machine lowers the plate by a fraction of a millimeter, spreads a new layer of powder, and repeats the process thousands of times. This allows engineers to grow an entire combustion chamber from the ground up, complete with impossibly complex internal cooling channels that curve and branch in ways that no traditional milling machine could ever achieve. The liquid fuel, which is kept at sub-zero temperatures, is forcefully pumped through these hidden channels in the walls of the engine bell before it is finally injected into the combustion chamber. As the cryogenic fuel flows through the walls, it absorbs the immense heat radiating from the exhaust, cooling the metal and preventing the engine from melting. Simultaneously, this process preheats the fuel, making it far more volatile and increasing the efficiency of the combustion process once it enters the chamber. Pumping this immense volume of propellant requires a device called a turbopump, widely considered the most complex and difficult component of the entire rocket to manufacture. A turbopump consists of a turbine driven by hot gases, connected by a central shaft to one or more centrifugal pumps. The spinning blades inside the pump, called impellers, are subjected to extreme hydrodynamic forces and must rotate at tens of thousands of revolutions per minute. These impellers are machined from solid blocks of titanium or advanced superalloys using 5-axis CNC milling machines that carve out the complex, sweeping curves of the blades with tolerances measured in 10,000ths of an inch. If the blades are uneven by even the weight of a paperclip, the imbalance at high rotational speeds will cause catastrophic vibration, tearing the pump apart in milliseconds. Therefore, the completed rotors undergo dynamic balancing on specialized machines that precisely measure and correct their mass distribution at microscopic levels. To prevent cavitation, the rapid formation and collapse of vapor bubbles that can pit and destroy the metal pump blades, engineers manufacture inducer blades that sit just ahead of the main impeller. These corkscrew-like blades gently grab the low-pressure liquid and slightly pressurize it before it hits the violent main pump. During operation, the turbopump draws low-pressure liquid oxygen and highly refined fuel from the main tanks and pressurizes it to thousands of pounds per square inch. This high-pressure fluid is rammed into the injector plate at the top of the combustion chamber. The injector plate functions like an exceptionally complex showerhead. It is precision machined with hundreds of tiny orifices, specifically angled so that the stream of fuel and the stream of oxidizer collide with each other in midair. This collision, known as an impinging jet configuration, atomizes the liquids into a fine, thoroughly mixed mist, allowing for rapid and complete combustion. In advanced engines, a pintle injector might be used instead, where a central post sprays oxidizer outward into a falling sheet of fuel, creating a highly efficient, continuous mixing zone. Regardless of the injector type, the ignited propellants create a massive volume of highly pressurized, extremely hot gas. However, high pressure alone does not generate upward thrust. Thrust requires downward velocity. This is where the physics of the de Laval nozzle come into play. The engine bell is precisely shaped with a converging section that narrows down to a tight bottleneck called the throat, followed by a wide, diverging section. As the high-pressure gas is forced toward the narrow throat, the laws of fluid dynamics dictate that it must accelerate. By the time the gas reaches the narrowest point of the throat, it is traveling at precisely the speed of sound. Once the gas passes the throat and enters the widening bell of the nozzle, the physics of compressible flow reverse. Instead of slowing down as the space expands, the supersonic gas rapidly expands, dropping in pressure but accelerating to phenomenal hypersonic speeds, shooting out of the engine at thousands of meters per second. According to Newton's third law of motion, the violent expulsion of this mass in one direction creates an equal and opposite reaction, driving the massive rocket upward. During the intense acceleration of launch, the rocket can experience a dangerous fluid dynamics phenomenon known as pogo oscillation. As the rocket surges upward, the liquid propellant sloshes down heavily toward the bottom of the tanks, artificially increasing the pressure at the engine inlets. This surge in fuel pressure causes the engines to burn hotter and generate more thrust, which accelerates the rocket even faster. The increased acceleration pushes the fuel down even harder, but momentarily later, the pressure drops as the pumps catch up, causing thrust to momentarily decrease. This creates a self-amplifying cycle of surging and dropping thrust, violently shaking the rocket up and down like a pogo stick. To solve this, engineers manufacture and install pogo accumulators into the fluid plumbing. These are spherical chambers partially filled with pressurized helium gas, connected to the liquid oxygen and fuel lines. As fluid pressure surges, the liquid is forced into the accumulator, compressing the helium gas, which acts like a shock absorber. As fluid pressure drops, the gas expands, pushing the liquid back into the line. This ingenious system actively dampens the pressure waves, ensuring a smooth flow of propellant. To steer the rocket as it ascends, the engines are mounted on a thrust vector control system. Because aerodynamic fins become entirely useless once the rocket leaves the atmosphere, the vehicle steers by physically tilting its engines. Massive hydraulic or electromechanical actuators are attached to the engine bell and the rocket frame. Controlled by the rocket's flight computers, these pistons rapidly extend and retract, pivoting the entire engine on a heavy-duty mechanical gimbal joint. By angling the hypersonic exhaust plume by just a few degrees, the system can dynamically pitch, yaw, and roll the rocket, keeping it perfectly balanced on its pillar of fire. Controlling this complex choreography requires an incredibly sophisticated avionics system. The brain of the rocket is housed in an avionics ring, a structural cylinder packed with flight computers, power distribution modules, and navigation sensors. Because rockets experience intense acoustic shock during launch, circuit boards are built in highly controlled clean rooms, utilizing specialized solders that resist cracking under severe vibration. Electronic components are radiation hardened to survive high-energy cosmic rays encountered outside the atmosphere. Navigation relies on inertial measurement units containing micro-electromechanical accelerometers and ring laser gyroscopes. A ring laser gyroscope splits a laser beam and sends the light in opposite directions around a closed path. If the rocket rotates even a fraction of a degree, the light traveling in the direction of rotation takes slightly longer to complete the circuit, creating an interference pattern that the computers instantly measure to calculate the exact orientation of the vehicle. To ensure absolute reliability, the avionics utilize triple modular redundancy, meaning 3 independent computers process every flight calculation simultaneously. If one computer is damaged and produces a conflicting output, the other 2 automatically overrule it. As the rocket ascends and the atmosphere thins, it sheds dead weight to maximize efficiency, a process known as staging. A multi-stage rocket consists of entirely separate vehicles stacked on top of one another. Connecting these massive stages requires a mechanism capable of holding the rocket together under the crushing forces of launch, yet able to cleanly sever itself in a fraction of a second. This is achieved using frangible joints. A frangible joint is manufactured as a hollow, structurally sound metal ring that connects the 2 stages. Inside the hollow cavity of this ring lies a mild detonating cord housed within a flattened steel tube. When the flight computer commands staging, An electrical impulse fires the detonator. The explosive core detonates, generating rapidly expanding gas that inflates the flattened steel tube with immense force. The expanding tube presses violently against the inner walls of the hollow joint, causing the metal ring to fracture along a precisely machined fault line. Because the explosion is entirely contained within the steel tube, it snaps the structure without sending dangerous shrapnel flying into the delicate engine components of the upper stage. Instantly after the joint breaks, heavy-duty pneumatic pushers, pistons powered by compressed gas, extend outward, physically shoving the empty lower stage away. Once safely separated, the upper stage engine ignites. This engine is manufactured differently than the first stage engine, featuring a much wider and longer nozzle bell. Because it operates in the near vacuum of space where there is no atmospheric pressure to compress the exhaust plume, a much larger expansion ratio is required to extract a maximum possible velocity from the expanding gases. Since the main engine gimbal can only steer while the engine is firing, the upper stage also utilizes a reaction control system to maneuver during unpowered coasting phases. This system is composed of clusters of tiny thrusters, precision machined from titanium. They operate by releasing highly pressurized nitrogen gas, or by using hypergolic liquid propellants that spontaneously ignite upon contact with each other. By firing specific combinations of these tiny thrusters in millisecond-long bursts, the flight computer can meticulously adjust the pitch, yaw, and roll of the stage in zero gravity. At the very top of the rocket sits the payload fairing, a streamlined aerodynamic nose cone designed to protect the delicate satellite payload from the brutal heating and dynamic pressure of ascending through the atmosphere. The fairing is manufactured in two identical clamshell halves, using advanced carbon fiber composites. Sheets of carbon fiber are laid up inside a massive curved mold, infused with epoxy resin, and cured under pressure. To protect the payload from the deafening roar of the rocket engines, which is loud enough to shatter delicate solar panels through acoustic vibration alone, the inside of the fairing is lined with specialized acoustic blanketing made from layers of melamine foam and sound-absorbing metamaterials. Once the rocket reaches the vacuum of space, the fairing is no longer needed. The two halves of the clamshell are held together by a system of pneumatic locks. Upon command, these locks release, and preloaded mechanical springs push the two halves away from the payload. The fairing falls away, exposing the satellite to space. The final stage then maneuvers into the precise orbital trajectory required, stabilizes its orientation, and releases a specialized clamp band, allowing the satellite to drift free into orbit.